All right, joining us today is a former WWE superstar, a politician, and president of the Cauliflower Alley Club. Please welcome B.Brian Blair. Mr. Blair, thanks for joining us.
I'm excited to be with you, brother.
Now, a little silly question that's been bothering me all day. What did the B stand for in B.Brian Blair? I've been trying to look for it, and it's just been driving me nuts, and I figured I'd go to the source and maybe you could shed some light on that.
Well, to be honest with you, and I guess I'm going to be really honest for the first time maybe on your show here. I've told it to some of my friends, but when I was younger, I had 4 younger siblings, and the kids, my little siblings, called me B. But my mom called me Bieber, like Justin Bieber.
Uh-huh.
And I used to ask her not to say that to my friends or anybody. Obviously, you know, Bieber's not too cool of a name, and or a nickname or any other name. So I was having my first match in Florida. It was a tag match. It was Skip Young and myself against Pat Patterson and Ivan Koloff. Mm-hmm. And my mom, who knew Buddy Colt, who was one of my the people that really encouraged me and helped me in wrestling. And since we moved from like apartments to apartments after my parents were divorced and grew up a tough life, you know, which Eddie Graham and the people from Florida knew, and Buddy Colt knew, and my mom got to be friends with Darlene, who was Buddy's wife at the time, and so she called me Bieber. But what made it bad was she called the number at Championship Wrestling from Florida and asked for Buddy, and the phone's right there, Dusty's right there, you know, everybody's right there, so she gets the phone. My mom says to Buddy Colt, hey, Buddy, don't let anybody hurt my Bieber. And
the rest is history.
Immediately after he told her whatever he told her, you know, of course, not sure, whatever he told her, and when he hangs up, he starts laughing real hard, and Dusty's going, Buddy, what's going on, man? Tell me what is so funny? And he said, you know, Mrs. Blair just called me up and said, make sure we don't hurt her Bieber. He goes, Bieber, oh, Dusty's going, oh, Bieber, oh, my gosh, I can't believe that, oh, my gosh, this is funny. And anyway, he said, he called me in, and he said, hey, Brian Blair, we got some news today. And we got to tell you that your mama called, and don't let anybody hurt her Bieber. He called her beeper. Beeper. So anyway, the guy said Bieber. He started the beeper, and the B was just because that's what was easiest to say, but sure. The real story behind it is Bieber and Beeper.
Oh, that's great. It's one of those things you always wanted to know, and now I know. But you mentioned Eddie Graham. You started with Eddie Graham's Championship Wrestling in Florida. Did you approach Eddie, or did he approach you to wrestle for him, or how'd that happen?
No, they approached me, actually. I was... it was like, don't think I didn't want to be there, but Eddie reached out a lot in the community as he knew it was good for the business. He teamed up with the Sheriff's Boys Ranch and Girls Villas, and that was the Championship Wrestling from Florida's #1 charity. So, that being the charity, they got some publicity, and Andy Hardy and guys like that from the newscasters, the sportscasters, gave championship wrestling a lot of time, and they would come to our matches, our high school matches, and there were stories written about me and stuff, and you know, tough kid, tough times. I think was one of the titles. But anyway, they kind of reached out and said, "Hey, when you're ready to wrestle, you know, give us a call, and we'll see what you're made out of." I said, "Okay, I appreciate that, Mr. Graham." You know, he always had guys with him, whether it was Bob Backlund or his son Michael Graham or Steve Kern, or you know, different guys with him that had amateur backgrounds, so we got to meet there, and then Buddy Colt, you know, and Jack Briscoe discussed a couple things, and while they wanted me to start training, so right out of high school, I went to start training in what's called the Dungeon. Was called the Dungeon at 106 North Albany Street, just off of Kennedy, where we filmed television for Championship Wrestling from Florida for many, many years, and had been prior to me for many, many years. And that's where people were trained, if you were able to be trained. I mean, the predecessors that were trained before me were Steve Kern and Mike Graham, obviously, and Dick Slater. Maybe a couple other people during the 3 years the 3 summers of the 3 years between college and high school that I trained there. Probably over 100 people came to try to wrestle, but the only 3 that actually successfully made it through the school, and it includes a couple people that came back later and tried, and a couple people that had to go elsewhere and break in. Danny Spivey was one. There were a couple other guys. Lex Luger ran off once, but then this was after us that he came back, and Hero liked him a lot. Paul Orndorff was the first one of us to break in during the first summer of getting stretched and beaten up in the Dungeon, and then Paul Orndorff came, who was a very just physical person, drafted forth by the Saints, and I watched him. He was a hero, a real hero. Like when I would sell sodas in the Tampa Stadium as one of my jobs, Paul was, I don't know, 10 years older than me or whatever, but he was a tremendous fullback, and I just remember him and Leon McQuay and Freddie Solomon and Sammy Gellerstedt and just all the Tampa, John Matuzak, these guys that were tough football players, but Paul was my hero, number 40. And when the offense was on, I'd set my sodas down, and but I could still sell the most sodas of all the people there, so the guy always invited me back, and so I did that, and never thought I'd ever meet Paul Orndorff, and here I meet him in the Dungeon.
Sure. Now, if we fast forward a little bit, you were booked by Vince McMahon Sr. to wrestle for WWF and make your first trip over to Japan for New Japan Wrestling. What was it like working in Japan compared to over here in the States, and especially working with Antonio Inoki and Tatsumi Fujinami?
Well, they liked me, and I was usually in the main events with with those guys, and it was because of the training that I got and the diversity of training that I got and the ability to understand how to work a shoot, which is a kind of a lost art. That's what we always, the biblical, there's nothing compared to the Bible in my eyes because I'm a very strong believer. But we had certain creeds, codes, things that we did, and Eddie Graham, who was the master psychologist, always said to me, "You have got to learn how to work a shoot." And just like it was, a wrestling match that, because and tell a story, and because you're out wrestling that heel, you're out shooting him. He's got to cheat to try to get ahead, and in the end is when you make your comeback, and from there you go into your finish. And he just taught me that. So that translated into many years and many successful tours in Japan.
And that was it. How was for you, as especially after working in the States a little bit, going to Japan? Was it, I don't know, was it a total different world out there as far as wrestling goes?
Yeah, absolutely, and especially from the fan reaction. The fans don't react anything like they do in Japan as they do in the United States. But when you do a suplex, a difficult suplex, or a complicated move, or you go into chain wrestling and you convince them that it's a 100% shoot, they'll give you a nice applause. But it was much more difficult to earn that applause in Japan.
When you came back over, hired by WWE, a lot of fans know you working in WWE, mostly from your stint with Jim Brunzell as the Killer Bees. And I heard that it was Hulk Hogan's idea to form the Killer Bees. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it was his idea to put us together as a tag team.
Okay.
He called me up, and I was working on top here in Florida, and we were drawing great houses. And the only shot that I had ever missed, and I kind of regret it to this day, was in Florida. West Palm Beach was sold out, and I knew I was going. Terry called and said, "Hey, I want you to, Vince wants you to come up." Obviously, he saw you, with his dad, and anyway, he likes you, and wants you to team with Jim Brunzell, and who was with the High Flyers with AWA, and become a tag team. And I said, shoot, great. I could see where the business was going at then, and I could tell that, sooner or later, championship wrestling from Florida was going to be on its back. And Vince and the WWF was going to be the king of the ring, and ultimately that is what happened. So I met Jim we met in Brantford, Ontario for our first match together. And it was about an hour or so before match time, and George Scott came into the locker room, and I think it was the first time I met Jimmy. So we were talking, getting to know each other a little bit better, and George said, "Hey, Vince wants you guys to come up with a name, and if you could come up with one in the next 15, 20 minutes or so, that would be great, because you're on in an hour, and we'd be able to introduce you as a tag team." And I thought, oh, wow, that's pressure. So, we're thinking about, different things, kind of forget exactly what came out of each other's mouths. But ultimately, when I was a kid, I remembered like the 1972 Dolphins, and they had the Killer Bees defense. Wow. And I thought that was really cool, because I was a Dolphins fan.
Sure.
We didn't have a pro team in Tampa then. And I said, and the reason the defense, Bonacani and the guys got their B name, the Killer Bees, is because half the defense had a last name that began with a B. So I said, Jimmy, how about the Killer Bees? And he kind of looked at me. He goes, wow, I like that. That's nice. I like it. So George Scott hadn't even left the room and yet to go back to Vince. And we called George, and George said, George, how about the Killer Bees? And he just like lit up and, wow, that's awesome. That sounds great. I got to run it by Vince. But as he did that, Lanny Poffo was sitting listening to the whole thing. And Lanny had all kinds of gimmicks. I mean, he had more gimmicks. And he reaches into his bag, and lo and behold, he pulls up a pair of Killer Bee tights, black and yellow.
Yeah, I've seen them in old pictures. Yeah, I've seen him wear them.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, did you see him wear them, actually?
Well, I seen him on his website. He has some old photos of him and his brother up there, and I see there's one with those kind of trunks on him. So it's kind of interesting why he was wearing that. Now it kind of put two and two together a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he was the reason. He wasn't the reason we were the Killer Bees, but he gave us certainly the trunk design idea, and. So, he was a Killer Bee before we were, I guess. And hopefully he'll be at our Legends Lunch this Friday that we have every 3 months in Tampa. That's another story. But George Scott went and told Vince. Vince loved it. And hence the Killer Bees were formed in Brantford, Ontario.
Oh, that's great. Now, I've also read, too, you said you were more proud of your singles career than you were being a Killer Bee. Why was that?
Because I had I don't get recognized enough for the single matches that I had. I've wrestled Ric Flair several times for the world title, and Ron Starr had some tremendous matches with him, and Nelson Royal, and Kamala, the first time that Jimmy Harris was introduced really in a big stage was when him and I were the main event in Springfield, Missouri. And then we also wrestled in Joplin, but Jimmy Harris was his name, and fortunately, I can tell you this: he's been assisted tremendously by the wonderful organization that I run, the Cauliflower Alley Club, and we've given away, over $40,000 this year to different wrestlers in need. But at that time, Jimmy was. He was raring to go, and he listened to me. I learned how to lead a match, and he told me what he was good at and what he liked to do. And the big guy, here he is, this giant African American, big son of a gun, mean-looking snarl on his face before he was Kamala, and. The people, and I was obviously over there and get ready to work with Ron Starr for the world junior heavyweight title, and we just rocked the house. Sold out, just totally rocked the house. And if you ask him, he will tell you the same. We never saw a person sit down the whole time we worked.
Wow. Now, I have a question here from a listener named Josh Hill from Red Hook, New York. He wants to know whose idea was it to wear the masks?
That was Billy Red Lyons. Mm-hmm. We were in Toronto doing interviews one time, and Billy Red said, this is kind of a heel gimmick, but I think it would work with you guys. And it's the fans are obviously, they are changing with the business. And I think if you guys used the switch thing, and he explained how he did it with his partner, and they wore a mask and switched his heels. But he said, wait till the heels get a lot of heat on you, and you could do it. and people pop. Jim Brunzell loved the idea. We asked Vince, obviously, he liked the idea, and so presented it to Vince, and I came up with Mass Confusion and how we could confuse a partner, about, laid out a couple hypothetical finishes and stuff, and he loved it. He said, "Let's go with it."
That's great. Yeah, so I haven't really I haven't seen that at all in today's wrestling, because there really hasn't been too many masked tag teams like that. But it was really interesting watching that. It was really good to see that whole mass confusion. It definitely added to the match, I think.
Yeah, and tag team matches to me add so much. I mean, during the heyday of the 80s when WWE or WWF actually set the world on fire with the rock and wrestling and just that whole era, it was fun to do that, and it was fun to be a part of that. And I think tag team wrestling was a huge part of that that's underlooked and underappreciated.
Definitely. I also have another question here from Ryan Stewart from Poughkeepsie, New York. He wants to know about Herb Abrams. He said he was a crazy-as-hell promoter of UWF, not to be confused with Bill Watts' Mid-South UWF. This was a New York City promotion in the early 90s where you wrestled. Do you have any thoughts about working with Herb?
I just spoke to a gentleman, Jonathan Palumbo, who's writing a story about the entire UWF promotion, and it was very interesting talking to him about that. And it was an interesting time, as it was, I was kind of at the end where I wanted to. Vince had promised us the tag team belts 3 times, and I could see that he would. George Scott would come back and tell us, well, we'd say, well, are we winning the belts tonight or what? What's the deal? And Vince said, well, the money's in the chase. Your paychecks have been good. As long as your paychecks have been good, don't worry, you're going to get the belts. So, okay, that was the same standard story. But after the 3rd time, I just decided that it was time to give my notice and go, and Jim stayed. But Herb was different. He would ask me for help, and I'd give him, my thoughts, and he would still do his own thing. No matter what I told him, he would always do his own thing. So it is what it is, and it was what it was. I mean, he cost a friend of mine a lot of money, but that's the friend's fault for listening to Herb.
Sure. Now, also, a lot of praise came from actually the hitman Bret Hart about wrestling the Killer Bees. You guys like working with the Hart Foundation the most, or did you have any other favorites?
Oh, without a doubt, working with Bret and I would sit down together, and he'd use the Canadian psychology, and I would use the Florida psychology, and we'd put together matches that were just awesome. Not that Jim and Anvil wouldn't, put their own things in, but we would be the ring generals, and we had matches that some of the best tag team matches that for that day that that I can remember. So they were great times and great people to work with.
Now with the favorites come the least favorites, and I know it's no secret that you and the Iron Sheik aren't best of friends. But there was an incident that happened a few years ago, which I was actually at, and also the co-host was at. It was a ring roast for the Iron Sheik, and I believe you were one of the roasters for the Iron Sheik. Can you take us back to that moment? Because you were talking, and then the Iron Sheik slapped you. Why do you think he acted like that? Was he just being a jerk, or I was just kind of curious about that moment because we were there live for it.
Wow, were you really?
Yeah, we were right in the front. We had the VIP seats and all that stuff. So
You saw the Scott Hall thing?
oh, yep, we were there for that too.
Wow. Well, first off, I don't know why Sheik just did that. It was his night. I was there out of respect, and I just don't understand some of the things that Sheik has done, but nobody does. And for so long, Howard Stern would try to get me to come on to the radio with the Sheik, and I just really kept bowing out, and they would chase me to be on the show, and I just never did the show, and I have no regrets for not doing it, because there's no telling what would have come of that, since Howard was such a Sheik fan. Yeah. And in my mind, Sheik had done, I mean, God bless his daughter who OD'd, and his wife who went through so much stuff with Khosrow, and the ribs I think of back with Khosrow, and the things. I don't want. I know why he's maybe off the wall a little bit, but I don't know what else to say.
No worries. Just curious about that whole time. But in August of 2014, you were elected as the 6th president of the Cauliflower Alley Club. Can you tell the fans out there who are listening who may not know about the CAC what you guys actually do out there? I know you mentioned it briefly about helping some wrestlers out there in hard times, but maybe just an overall explanation, a little bit more about it.
Well, in the words of Jim Ross, who I love Jim Ross, he's not only was my second favorite announcer next to Gordon Soley, but he's an intelligent guy who actually I worked with during the beginning of his career with Watts and Leroy back in Oklahoma, and I have nothing but respect for Jim, and I'm sure he'll be at the Cauliflower Alley Club this year. But the Cauliflower Alley Club is the only insurance policy that the wrestlers have. You join the Cauliflower Alley Club, and we only allow good people. So if you're not a good, and believe me, we have terminated several memberships because people were not the kind of people that we want. We want you can be a fan, but you better be a nice person. That's all.
Sure.
That's as short as I can summarize it. Just be a nice person and a respectful person, and we appreciate having the fans. We appreciate the WWE for all they do for us. We appreciate everyone that joins, and you can join for $25 a year, $50 for 2 years, or $300 for a lifetime membership, which comes with more stuff that you could sell on. You could double or triple your profit on eBay for the stuff that Carl Lauer has collected and sends to people who join as a life membership, like Lou Thesz's original autograph, signed on the 25th program, which now we're getting ready to have our 52nd reunion, and the certificates you get, the things you get are the newsletters that are not printed on the internet, unless it's after they come to our members. Our members are golden to us. I would say that 35% of our members are wrestlers, and 65% are fans. And when we converge on Vegas for our reunions, it's just off the top. We have seminars, we have cribbage tournaments, we have bowling tournaments, we have nostalgia rooms with all kinds of stuff that's so interesting to see. We have guys selling, their gimmicks, and we have honorees that are just phenomenal, like Tully Blanchard and Kevin Von Erich, and the Glow Girls and Dave Meltzer and Cahagas and the Cuban Assassin. The several people are, and we'll have a few more too that'll be there, and it's one of the most humbling experiences for those that are being honored. We sell out, so we sell out every year, and since I've taken over, at least we have. And I don't say that. I say that humbly. It's not because of me; it's because of the people that are around me that have gotten so motivated, and we've made some changes to make it more fan friendly, and also the actual honorees, the wrestlers. I mean, they can't say enough about it. And when you give away over $40,000 as we have during just this year, we're 2016, to guys and people that have fallen on difficult times. I mean, I don't like to repeat any of the people that have asked us for help, but a couple of them have asked us to use their name and promote the business. And we were just speaking about Jimmy Harris Kamala, who lost his legs to diabetes. You know, we've done so much for Jimmy, and it's guys like Bobby Heenan, who he's Paul Orndorff, and good guys, Blackjack Mulligan, guys that just fell either, disease, divorces, met Bernie Madoff, whatever the thing is the Cauliflower Alley Club is always there for our members, and even if you're not a member, we do help up to a certain amount, but being a member helps a lot more. And it's not just the wrestler. It could be a referee. It could be anybody that's made a living in the wrestling business. Sure.
Well, everybody listening too, if you head on over to Cauliflower Alley Club.org, you can see more information about it. And Mr. B.Brian Blair, we thank you so much. I know we barely scraped the surface on what a great career you've had, and we really appreciate your time. Is there a way fans can keep up with you today, anywhere on social media?
Absolutely. They can go to my Facebook page. It can go to I tweet. I do as much as I can. To LinkedIn. I enjoy social media. I enjoy interacting with the fans. That's why we'll have Legends Lunch, which is a whole other story this Friday, and honor Steve Kern and even a guy, Rusty Brooks, who did many favors for many people in championship wrestling from Florida. But the cast there, from Rocky Johnson to Gerald Briscoe, Buddy Colt, Ron Bass, Cuban Assassin, Cahagas, it just goes on down. I mean, it's a great, great time. Bill White's coming from Carolinas. I mean, Dottie comes from Tallahassee, Dottie Curtis, and we just have a great time, and it's a great gathering. It's another thing that I do for in honor of Hiro Matsuda and Gordon Soley and Jack Briscoe, who we all tried to give their life's laughter while they knew they were dying. And that's what I'm about, is making people in our business and the fans as happy as possible, and as grateful for being a wrestling fan as possible, and to always give them their money's worth.
Great. Well, I really appreciate your time tonight. We thank you so much for joining us.
Man, you're the best. I appreciate it so much, too.